I appreciate the opportunity to come here. And I'm one of the 3 mics at BBSI. And my role down there is I'm the risk manager for BBSI. And I spend a lot of time out in the field working with various clients on safety-related issues. Most recently, for what it's worth, I just was instrumental with a client of ours in doing an OSHA investigation for a young man, 23-year-old, who got electrocuted by a power line. So, you know, safety is near and dear to me, and safety is very important. You know, you watch this stuff and you watch how these types of accidents impact families. It's pretty significant. This guy is amazing. I mean, he's got the greatest spirit going. He's just happy. I think he's happy to be alive. One of the things that was really kind of cool about that, if there's any cool to it, is, you know, when that happened, 12,000 volts, he went down. And when he went down, what state was he in? He was in Idaho. Hey, who said that? He gets a gift card, man. No, so here's the reality of it. This guy's heart had stopped. You know what saved his life? There's a coworker right there. And that coworker, because of the safety culture they had developed, he knew CPR and immediately started it and started this kid's heart within 10 minutes. Got him going, got him taken care of. Now, I don't want to use that as a scare tactic, but that's the reality of the type of stuff that happens out there every single day. Every day. And what we really aim to do, what I do a lot, is try to go out there, help you identify hazards, help create that type of safety culture that develops a teamwork and a camaraderie. Rob talked about something near and dear to me. I'm a faithful guy too. I pray a lot. I pray for thousands of people constantly. We need all the help we can get. And one of the things that's really interesting about that is, man, we were praying for this kid. We were hoping he was going to be okay, and he's going to be okay. I mean, he's going to make it through it. But one of the things I always think of, and I learned this years ago, have you ever heard the term, I'm sure you all have, be your brother's keeper? Man, I took that to heart, and I use that everywhere I go. And I'm always watching out for my brother. I'm always watching out for people out there relative to safety and health, because it does make a difference. We don't see everything. We just don't. And so it's really good to create that culture, and I love the fact that man, Jen and Rob and Marlon are putting together a safety culture here that is just outstanding. Now, I got to tell you a little secret. This is kind of funny. I was just listening. Rich started out here. He was a school teacher. I had him. I had Rich as a school teacher. He was my algebra teacher in 1981. I'm glad he went to traffic safety. Okay. I'm just kidding. Is he here? Just joking. Okay. So I want to start off a little bit by asking everybody, how many of you are repeat workers? How many worked here last year? Holy smokes, look at that. Okay. Did last year go without any kind of accidents? Now you hear him laughing over there, right? Okay, so here's the reality. What happened last year? What were some of the accidents that we saw or witnessed last year? What's that? Who hit a deer? Oh my heavens, he hit a deer. Did you hurry and claim it and take home and have venison for the rest of the year? That's a way to, that's a redneck hunter right there, I'll tell you. So that's a reality, man. You're out on the roadways, aren't you? You're in a lot of different areas and the animals are out. So you hit a deer. That's one. Did you get injured? Okay, thank goodness you weren't injured. Okay. Was the car okay? Rock. Okay, so we hit a deer. What else happened?
I got hit by a truck.
You got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Looks like he did you a favor. Look at that. Is that why you got that big old beard going? That looks, I'm just jealous is all. Okay, so you got hit by a truck. How did it hit you? What were you doing?
I was standing on the side of the road, and it was a semi-truck, and it went out wide, and so it caused the trailer to go out. It kind of just bumped into me.
Okay. Thank goodness he wasn't going fast, right?
Yep.
Did it hurt?
Yeah.
I know it's a dumb question, but okay.
But
What
what
would you
happened to
do
your
different
stuff?
now to prevent that accident from ever happening again?
Honestly, I feel like most of it was his fault, but I was probably paying more attention to the entire vehicle instead of just the cab.
That's true. Good. You pay attention to the entire vehicle. So here's the thing. What were you doing last year? Were you flagging, or what were you? Okay, you're flagging. How many of you are flaggers? Okay. What happens about 60 days into flagging? Have you seen about every tourist you want to see and wave to everybody and the Idaho thumbs ups and all that kind of stuff? You had enough of that? Are people crazy out there? You're the so you're a flagger? Oh, okay. All right, man.
He is crazy.
He is. So here's the reality. The fact is, how many of you have ever operated a piece of equipment and remember what it was like the very first time you operated? Say a forklift. Okay, was it easy? How were you positioned? I mean, what were you doing at the time? You're operating this brand new piece of equipment. How were your senses? Were they just
Alert.
They were alert, right? You're really tuned in because now you got something new and you got to think about it, right? Okay? Now after a few months of doing that, does it get easier?
A little bit, yeah.
Gets a little easier. And then after a year, it's pretty easy. You get sloppy. So let me ask you this. How many of you remember everything that went on your drive here today? One or two? How come? Man, you're an autopilot, aren't you? For the majority of us, we're an autopilot. Now, James, did you get a drive today? You didn't get a drive? All right, I'm going to hook you up, okay? So for you, if you had to drive to work, it'd be a little bit different, right? You'd probably be like, oh, kind of freaked out a little bit, right? But here's the problem. This is what challenges us as individuals. We get so familiar with the task that we're doing. We get so ingrained and enthralled in it. We get so good at it. We actually become one of the best. Now, I know that's kind of a crazy term, but we become the best at something. We're all good at stuff. We're all good at something. The more we do it over and over and repeat that, the better we get, to the point that we don't have to think so much about it. We go into autopilot, and we just start doing things because we know how to do it. We don't have to think about it. Have you ever taken a trip? And I used to do this all the time. I worked out the Idaho National Labs for 15 years, and I am not kidding you. There were days I could not remember the drive out. I remember getting in the car and heading out, and I think, oh man, did I sleep through that? I hope not. I was driving. But I didn't remember much of it. It was just kind of a blur. And that happens to us. But when we get to that state, what does that do to us relative to being prepared in a safety stand, or a safety stance? How safe are we when we're in that mode? We're not. That's when we get hit by trucks. It really is. And I'm not pointing fingers at all. That stuff happens all the time. It happens every day. Happens every day. So what do we do? How do we prevent that? Because if that guy had been going just a little bit faster or moved over just a few more inches, would it have been so lucky for you? Would you have walked away so easily from that?
No.
Don't you have something to live for, man?
Yeah, we're working on it.
You'll see? That's the thing. We're all valuable. We all have reasons to live, man. We got families. Anybody like to fish or hunt? Okay, we love to do that. Camp, go out and do things, enjoy the outdoors.
Wait, no.
No? Oh, video games. Video games, okay, you got something to live for there. What's the newest game now everybody's playing? Fortnite, yeah. I don't even dare. Fortnite, okay, gotcha. All right, but we all have great reasons to live. And we actually, believe it or not, probably have people that love us and want to see us come home. The idea of working is what? Why do we work? Make money, right? Do we want to work every single day of our lives? Is that all we do? I mean, we make money for what purpose? Retiring? Retirement, okay. We make money for more video games. What'd you say? Oh, friendship, okay. Friendship's good. That's really good. But why do we work? Survive, right? We have bills. We have nice things we want to have. New cars. Some guys, new video games, new game systems. Some of us want to go on dates. Some of us want to find a wife. Some really don't. Some of us have one and we're grateful for it. But the purpose of all the reasons we work is so we can make the money we need to go out and have a lifestyle. Now, if we're injured or severely in a state that we can't work, what does that do for us? No, it really impacts us. It does. I always laugh. I'll just go on work comp. What does that do for us? Does work comp work? No. It's there to kind of just barely sustain you, but it is no way to make a living. So that's not the answer. The answer is watching out for each other, keeping each other safe, being safe ourselves, and doing something to try to raise our awareness and be tuned into our surroundings so that we're not going to get hit by a car. We're not going to get ran over. We're not going to hit deer. Now that's a challenge, not hitting deer. I've hit a couple myself. I hit one so fast when I was in college that it went straight up in the air, and I went back to find it and I couldn't find it. That's no kidding. I wasn't as safe in college as I am now, though, I'll tell you that. No fun at all hitting those animals. So, we got 2 accidents. Was there any other accidents? I know of at least one other. How many more do we have?
I was rear-ended by a car going 70 miles per hour.
You were rear-ended by a car going 70 miles an hour. How'd that work out?
I was in the right lane and I was spraying just out the car window where the tabs had been removed.
Do you call those dinks?
Well, that's a dink.
I think that's the coolest thing. That's what makes traffic safety so cool. Is you got an actual word called dink that actually means something. I think that's funny, man. I love that term. Dinks. All right. So you're out spraying, marking where those had peeled up?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that section of highway where you were at, was there indications that there was road construction going on?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually saw it. So yes, there was. Did that protect you?
Obviously no.
No, because people are kind of crazy. You know, I love the fact that the gentleman here, is it Todd? Todd from Hartwell. You know, he was talking about people being crazy. Anybody know about the cell phone law in Idaho Falls right now? What's the cell phone law in Idaho Falls relative to driving? Hands free, right? You want to do something fun? Oh, I think it's fun. I'm kind of a dork this way. I like this stuff. Go to an intersection, watch what people are doing. How many people are adhering to that law? I cannot. Yeah, well, if you're a policeman, you're okay. Yeah, they can do it and do it safely. So. Yeah. But here's the reality. I mean, we have this law put in place, and I love the fact that they're trying to do something to minimize the accidents. Because let's face it, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. Have you noticed the influx of traffic in the area? Are our roadways really designed right now to handle that all the time? And my favorite thing in the world, roundabouts. Aren't those cool? I realize that they're a good idea and whatnot. It's just that normally when you do that, what's that?
When you're the only one in it.
When you're the only one in it? I tell you what, the other night, the new one down there on Boulevard, I watched a car come into that, and there was a young lady trying to cross the crosswalk, and she'd go out and then step back. And then she'd go out and she'd turn around and go back. And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. These people are not yielding to her. So, being me, I pull around and stop, and I'm like, go ahead, honey. And I'll tell you what, how this car missed me. They went right around my left side, up in the island, and she's like, ah! So I'm like, holy smokes, you better hurry, get across. It happens. People are so distracted. Cell phones are one of them. But what else are people doing? You ever watch in the morning what goes on? Eating. Have you seen this? This is my favorite. I mean, good heavens, man. Like, what are you doing? You got to drive at some point.
Driving a stick too. So
Drive a stick.
Oh
man, I'll tell you what, they are not going to let their Maverick sandwich down. But this morning, just going to BBSI, I'm headed down 17th. I'm watching young ladies put makeup on, they're trying to drive, like, you know, that goes on. I finally, for the first time in years, saw a guy shaving. That was kind of cool. Wow. So it's kind of nuts. People are distracted. And the other thing is does it seem like the world's moving faster? Isn't it nuts? I mean, think about what's going on out there. We got technology galore. We got people. I was watching a guy today. He's running. He's got earbuds in. He's got some watch he's running. He's looking at this. I mean, there's so many distractions. But understanding that and conscientiously thinking about the fact that there's that many distractions out there, can that help us be safer at what we do on our jobs? Knowing that people are really not tuned in to me. Look at me. I mean, I'm not one little guy. I put a piece of orange on here. You should see it for miles. And yet, do you think I'd stand a chance standing out in the middle of a highway system? People are just boom, boom, boom. They're not slowing down. Anybody been driving to Boise lately? I mean, is that like the decade of construction out there? I don't know what's going on, but it's just solid road construction. It's so frustrating. I couldn't believe it. I was coming back. I had Royce Pickett from BBSI in the car with me coming back from Boise. And we missed our turn because there's just so much chaos and traffic's going out. It's posted at like 60. Everybody's doing about Mach 10. And I'm like, oh, and I turned and I was headed for Snow, Utah. It was awesome. And then here's the greatest thing. You know that you got to turn to get going back the other way. So I'm going, I'm like, oh man, it's a state trooper. So I got to go clear up over the hill so I can illegally cut across. I mean, it's like, come on. And the greatest thing was I just barely get across and head down. And there's that state trooper coming up and over. He knew what I was doing probably. But we got away with that, I guess. But it's crazy out there. So, now let's reel this back in a little bit. So we had a young man get hit at 70 miles an hour. I was so grateful that you made it through that. You're back. You gonna do that again?
I wouldn't recommend
The
it.
answer is no. Don't. No, but we got to realize that we're out there out in public's eye. We're out there along the highway systems. There's a lot of chaos going on. People are not seeing us. Do not ever for a second think automatically they see where you're at. Always know that when you're out there, you're potentially, in somebody's target, I guess, if you will. Somebody's not seeing you. And so you've got to be really conscientious. Don't turn your back to them if you can help it. I mean, if you've got to turn your back or do something, please get out of the way. Do it in a place that, you have a greater chance of not being struck by a moving vehicle. Get hit by a trailer. I thought there was 2 of them last year. Wasn't there 2? Didn't somebody get hit by a mirror? Somebody got hit by a mirror. We got hit by a trailer. We had the vehicle down in Preston area. And then we had the deer. I know there was something else.
There was a pilot driver that drove off the road.
So somebody drove off the road, okay. Oh yeah, super, that was the road, yeah, that was fun. Okay? So the bottom line is it's crazy. Isn't that Megan? Holy smokes. Wow. How you doing? That's awesome. Okay. So how do you prevent this from happening? How do we make sure that this year coming up for us, we're not going to have any accidents? Is that possible? Do you believe we can go all year long with no injuries and no accidents?
Yeah.
And what kind of a benefit is that to you in the back end? Why is that such a good thing? One, you don't get hurt, obviously. But did you hear what Todd from Hartwell was saying? Injuries have an impact on a business. I thought for a minute he might talk about experience modifier, but with every injury and the severity of that injury, it impacts potentially what's called an experience modifier, or we call it the mod rate. So every business starts out technically at a 1.0. That's normal. And over time, they factor in, well, this business does this and this and this. And based on a code that they use, the NICS code, they determined that in the industry-wide, this is the rate at which we're going to bill for our insurance, for workman's comp. Now, if you as a business go out and demonstrate that you're actually better than the average, that you don't have injuries, that you stay safe, that you put safety programs in place, and people are really doing a great job without getting injured, your experience modifier starts going down. And as that goes down, and this thing calculates over 3 years, so once you have it, it's there for 3 years until it rolls off. And then it brings in all that experience before. So it's a rolling 3, if you will. That experience modifier impacts the premium. The bottom line is this: if you can keep your injuries and things down like that, then experience modifier rate for the business goes down. In turn, what does that mean to the business? More profitability, because they're not spending the profit so much on that insurance rate. And with more profitability, what does that mean? More opportunity? What's that?
New trucks.
New trucks.
New equipment, bonuses.
New trucks, bonuses, new equipment. It really does have a significant impact on every single one of you that are working for the business. It helps when you're looking at, I've been here 3 years and I want to have a pay rate increase. So if I can get an increase, your safety has an impact on it. Now, that's not to say that we ever want you to not tell somebody about being injured. That's not what we're saying. We got to report those things. Reporting it helps us understand what's going on out there, and helps us keep those rates down, helps us go out and impact that. That's significant. So again, what are some of the things that we can do out there, each and every one of us, to minimize exposure, to keep our safety really at an all-time high, and to make sure we're not getting injured? What are some things that you think should be done on a regular basis to make sure that happens? Safety trainings?
JSAs,
Okay, what's a JSA?
job safety analysis,
It is, job safety analysis. What does a job safety analysis do for you?
alerts to hazards on the job so everybody's aware of them.
Okay? Does anybody in here ever used a JSA or not know what it is? So job safety analysis. It's a tool. You can create your own. But in essence, I'm telling you, this takes less than 10 minutes. It takes less time than it does to go get a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or whatever and come back and drink it. You go out and you look at the job site. You get together as a team and you look at it and you're saying, okay, what are the things that can get me injured or hurt today? What are the things that absolutely have to go right on this job so that we all get to go home safe tonight? What other things do you think out there? When you're talking about traffic, you're laughing.
Radio communication.
Radio? Good radio communication. Man, communication is so important. Clear, effective, and concise, right? What kind of communication do we talk about? Three-way communication. What does that mean?
Know each other's names.
Know each other's names helps, right?
Yeah.
Hey, dude with the beard. Does that work? It does if you're the only one with a beard. Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you know who you're working with. It's going to be changed up, but know who you're working with. 100%. And when you talk to them, say, hey, Rob, this is Mike. Go ahead and send them through. Is that hard? And then Rob sits there and goes, what? Who is this? No. Just kidding. Make sure you have clear, concise communication. You got to also, you do have a responsibility. If you're holding up traffic, you have a responsibility to keep them safe too, right? That communication is invaluable. You've got to have good communication. What else? What's that? Stay focused. Excellent. What does that mean to stay focused out there? Pay attention, right?
Make sure your sign's facing the right way.
So we had a flagger here a while back, and that flagger was like this. How many of you seen it? Okay? You have to be visible.
All right, so, yeah, be focused, pay attention. I love that one, the sign. Why were they doing that? Were they exhausted, tired?
It was windy.
So when you're standing for a long time, it's nice to crouch every for 30 seconds or something.
Okay.
It was windy, actually. He was using the
Oh, he
sign
used it to hide?
as a barricade
Gotcha.
from the wind. That was
Okay.
his explanation to me.
Yeah, I
At
tell you,
least.
being a flagger's not easy, is it? Everybody says, oh man, that's a great way to make money. And then you're 2 months into it and you're like, oh. Yeah, but it's an important role. How many of you believe being a flagger could potentially be a life or death situation? You better, absolutely, for you and or for the traffic that you're trying to control. One of the things that I always watch when I'm in Idaho Falls is what the road crews are doing. And there's a chip crew out there, not a chip crew, they do the cracks and seams. And I won't say the name because I kept them doing this all the time. And their flagger, that poor dude, he's out there, he's so confused, he's got cars running into each other. And I just thought, holy cow, this is going to be a bad thing real quick if somebody doesn't fix it. Fortunately, they sent somebody up that knew what they were doing. So you need to have, you understand how to do it correctly. Traffic signals. You need to know. So you got to have training, right? Okay.
If you don't know how to operate something, say it.
Yeah. So what did you just say?
If you don't know how to operate something, say that you don't.
Absolutely. If you don't know it, say that you don't. Please don't try to wing it. If you don't know, that's okay. Very, very much. That's okay. We want to make sure you know what you're doing. Absolutely. I guarantee Marlon and Rob and Jen, they want you to be trained and ready out there on the job. They do not want you winging it. And that's okay if you don't know.
You gotta know what's dangerous or what could hurt.
Say that again.
You gotta know what's dangerous or what could hurt.
Absolutely. What's dangerous, what could help you, or hurt you, excuse me. So the JSA that we were just talking about, a job site analysis, can help with that. The job site analysis purpose is to go out there as a group, take enough time to walk through and identify hazards. What are some hazards you might find out on a roadway? Cars, right? That's an obvious one. Cars. What else? Obstruction to the sign? Okay. What's that? Lighting, right? Lighting is an impact.
Line of sight.
Line of sight? Animals. Thank you. Yes, animals. Do we have deer, elk, moose, that kind of thing? Residential, dogs, cats, domesticate, all the time, right?
I had buffalo come through my job.
Buffalo?
That was an interesting one.
Holy cow, did you hang out or did you just go, okay, everybody stop, just sit there, I'm out of here?
They were paving the road, and they actually ran across the fresh pavement as it was
Wow.
going down. It was pretty great.
Buffalo, okay? So, here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing probably about 15 or 20 of you throw out ideas of things that are hazards. Are you actually talking about those when you're out there working?
I'm constantly thinking about it.
Sometimes. Turkey. Thanksgiving just came early. So, we just need to talk, man. Spend some time out there working with each other, identify those hazards, and make sure that you're doing what it takes to keep you and everybody else there as safe as possible. We want everybody safe. It just takes a few minutes. What's that?
Take a minute, something to teach in safety. If your safety, if the job changes, you should take a minute and talk about the new hazards that are going to be there or whatever.
Absolutely. Take a minute is a coined phrase that they use constantly. Now here's a question for you. Does something change every day?
Yes.
Absolutely. Every hour, every minute. Something's changing all the time. Does it always have an impact on you? It may not. It doesn't always. But man, we ought to be tuned in to recognizing those things. Like if signs blow over because of weather, or we got lightning banging down, we're in torrential downpour, whatever's going on, does that impact what we're doing? Absolutely. But that should raise awareness to us that we've got to be safe ourselves, but also, who else do we have to be concerned about? The traffic, right? Because it impacts the workers, it impacts the traffic. There's a lot going on. I used to have a guy I worked with, I mentored him for a long time, mentored under him, and he used to talk about stepping out of drama or step out of the drama of the moment. He used to draw a triangle. He's like, step out of it, get out of that for a minute, and look on what's going on around you. Keep your awareness high. Take a minute to stop and really look around and see what's happening. It's amazing sometimes what you don't see. Again, what we talked about earlier, those things that we do repeatedly each and every day, that becomes background. It becomes just second nature to us. But when we do that, our guard goes down. So I just heard an excellent back here, focus. We got to focus. Because if we don't, what happens? We get so familiar that pretty soon our blinders do this. And we're just tuned into the moment. We're just seeing that little piece instead of what's going on out here. We've got to keep our awareness high. So here's a few safety tips relative to this. Can't really see it too much, but how many of you wear high visibility clothing? I see a lot of you do on a regular basis. High vis clothing is so important. If they don't see you, you're not there. And you may be a victim. You've got to have that on. So high visibility clothes, armbands, and you guys, most of you just wear the vest or the shirts, is that right? Okay, high visibility clothing. Let me get that so you guys can see. Be observant. Did we talk about that already? Yeah. Absolutely. Be observant. Yeah, be sure to look before you shift your position, before you move. think about when you turn your back to traffic, what that really means? How close are you to the line of sight or the line of travel? Are you right at that edge where people are coming by? Are you potentially a target for a side view mirror that somebody has on the rental trailer? Have you seen some of those things that are out there a mile? So watch for that stuff. Beware of work site vehicles. Yeah, would you believe that a lot of injuries and accidents happen because of their own company vehicles ripping through? That happens a lot, actually. I shouldn't even use their name, but some of the larger construction companies in town, you'd be amazed how many times they've had somebody get significantly injured by their own company vehicles ripping through, trying to be, I don't know what you'd say, I don't want to say cool, but just going too fast. Okay? Understand the lanes. Know where people are supposed to go. Use spotters. What does that mean?
If a big piece of equipment's backing up, have someone walk along with it.
Yes. Use another set of eyes. Anytime, and I look at these things sometimes, we used to call it critical movements or critical steps. Whenever there's a potential for a significant event to occur, recognize that there's a hazard. Take steps to ensure the safety of everybody and ensure that it goes off without a problem. Spotters are significant to that. So if you're moving something, you can't see over it. If you're backing somebody in, use some eyes in there that can see. But the kicker to that is if you're a spotter, get out of the way. I mean, get in a spot you can see, but don't get directly behind them. How many people get injured every year backing a truck into a trailer? Any idea?
I ran somebody over like that once.
It happens. People get pinched. Have you ever been pinched between a truck and a hitch?
That's like a crush by.
It's a crush. Yeah, it's bad. So stand to the side. Like my kids, it drives me crazy. I taught them better. But I watch them all the time. My boys, they're fearless and they're dumb. I love them to death, but seriously, some things, they'll stand directly behind the truck and go, come on. And his brother's backing up saying, dude, I can't see you. Like, seriously. It drives me nuts. Those are adopted children, I swear they are. Okay. So use spotters. Understand communication signals. Can anybody show me what the official communication symbol in Idaho is? Don't show me. Okay. What communication signals do you use? What communication signals do you use out on the roadway?
Hand signals.
Okay, what does this mean?
No.
Okay? What does this mean? Does everybody have an understanding of that? How do you know what somebody's giving you? When somebody sends you a signal and you don't understand, what do you do?
Just sit there.
You look at them like, what are you doing? No, you really need to communicate that. That communication is so valuable. Go find out what that means. Find a universal language, especially if you're at distances and your radios are messed up or whatever. Find some means that you can communicate. You girls are laughing. Have you been through this before? Have you had signals?
Yeah.
Let me see one.
I have signals.
Hand signals? Okay, I'm just curious if you've experienced something out there on the roadway, and it happens. People will tell you something, you're like, what? You don't understand. Yes, sir. What does that mean? Stop. Okay? Anybody in here ever work with cranes or around heavy equipment? Okay? What does this mean? Hoist up. What does this mean? What does this mean? Okay? There's a lot of things we can do in signals that help communicate with operators. What does this mean? Stop. Okay, good. So know all that stuff. Understand your communication signals that you're going to rely on to keep you safe, your coworkers safe, and the public safe. Understand before you start using them. All right. Don't stand underneath suspended equipment. Do you ever get around that? Is there ever an opportunity for equipment to be up in the air while you're working around it? Okay, we call that a suspended load. What does OSHA expect of us if we're around that type of thing?
You are not under it.
You are not under it.
The swing radius.
And you should be wearing what?
Hard hat.
Hard hat. Oh my heavens. We were talking earlier, who was talking about roofers? You want to see something crazy? Watch what roofers are doing. Roofers are out there with trusses. They're standing underneath it like this with taglines going, okay, go that way, dude. They're right underneath it. What happens if that drops? There is no person fast enough to get out of the way. That is a potential fatality. I can't stand to watch that stuff. You should stand to the side. If you're around suspended loads, make sure you got hard hat on, high-vis clothing, safety glasses. May sound silly. You know what's kind of interesting about PPE? You know why we wear PPE?
Keep you safe.
Keep us safe, absolutely. But why?
Because somebody screwed up.
No. The reason we have to wear PPE is we have not figured out any effective way to engineer the hazard out. I mean, number one, if you look at the hierarchy of hazards out there, and once we identify them, the number one fix is to engineer it out. And if we can't engineer it out, then we try to control it with administrative controls, which are procedures, processes, steps that are written that we use. And when we get to a point that we can't engineer everything out or administratively factor it out, we wear PPE. When we use sharp objects or instruments, we wear gloves, right? Everybody know that gloves have cut and puncture resistant ratings on them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Like fire.
Yep, they do all the time. And you buy the right kind of glove for the job you're doing. Anyway, so that's important to understand. So PPE is highly important because we haven't engineered out any of the hazard. We have to wear it. Apply parking brakes. Anybody use a vehicle out there on the roadways? Ever get on inclines or down a hill or anything? Use your parking brakes. They're there for a reason. Yes, sir.
There is when you hire a piece of equipment that is carried down, not using a PPE, that harness, does it fall over, you're connected to the equipment?
Which piece of equipment? Man lift. Man lift is one of the only ones that's the status. However, engineers have factored out that kind of issue. There are now man lift manufacturers out there that create harness locations on a piece of equipment or on a piece of anchor point. And OSHA expects you to wear it on that. But typically you don't want to become a slingshot. So on that one you don't wear it. You're right. Okay. Use a seat belt. There's a reason why seat belts are in cars. By now everybody should understand seat belts save lives. And I know there's people that say, well, I have a cousin. And that cousin got in an accident. He wasn't wearing his seat belt. Flipped him out in the field. He walked away from it. Well, guess what? He should have played the lottery too, because that does not happen very often. More people die from not wearing seat belts and being involved in automobile accidents. We've already had people die this year from it. I mean, it's just crazy. There's a reason we wear seat belts, and seat belts are not only in vehicles we drive, our cars, trucks, vans, whatever. Seat belts are on forklifts. Yep, they are. Let me ask you something. What's the fine if OSHA catches you without a seat belt on a forklift? $12,600 on a first-time offense. They raised the rates. 12.6 for not wearing your seatbelt. They consider that safety equipment. You got $12,600 laying around? Guess who gets to pay it? Actually, your business will, but.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And then you don't have a job, and you're probably going to have a seatbelt shoved somewhere that you're not going to enjoy. So. Okay. Be cautious when approaching vehicles. Why? If you have to approach a vehicle, why are you cautious? Don't know who's operating it, and the biggest piece is, do they know you're even there? How many times have you walked up to a car that's your buddy or somebody, and you're like, hey, dude, you're walking up, and they pull away? My wife does that to me all the time, but that's more on purpose, I think. So. But it happens. You got to be cautious about that. Be careful, because when you're walking up to machinery, especially, whether it be road graders, front end loaders, any heavy equipment out there, man, they can't see you. I love this computer. They don't always see you. In fact, the only time you can really be secure in the knowledge that they know you're there is when? Eye-to-eye contact. Absolutely. Until that point, they have no idea you're even there. How much of a bump does it take from just a forklift before you get injured? Just a bump. I dealt with an injury 3 years ago, just before I hired on a BBSI. A girl was working in a warehouse. The forklift spun around backwards, and it wasn't going very fast, and bumped her like this, hit her from behind. Broke her pelvis in 3 places and dislocated her hip. And I mean, that's just a little bump, little forklift. That happens. Until you have eye-to-eye contact and they know you're there, they don't know you're there. Now, how do you make eye-to-eye contact? You get to a safe location away from them and pay attention, and you try to, make sure they know where you're at. And you do whatever this communication thing is you're doing and say, hey, can we talk for a minute? You walk up and tell them what you're doing. Hey, we're going to be in the area. We're going to be over here working on this stuff. What does that do from a safety standpoint when they know you're right here working? Makes them aware, absolutely. Does that minimize our risk now? Absolutely. That minimizes the chance for somebody to get hurt, for somebody to not be able to go home in the same state they were in the morning. I worked with a lot of guys, they went home safe, and oftentimes they went home in a lot better condition than they were when we got there. I mean, it was kind of just the fact of things. So make eye contact before moving operating equipment, and then don't ride on moving equipment. That's another 12.6 fine, or it can go up from there over $70,000 if they think it's a willful act. And I don't know how you look at it any different. If you climb on a piece of equipment willfully, and you take a ride around, not good. Now, I know you guys out there working in traffic, you've got to be on the trailers, you got to be up throwing pylons and stuff. Please be careful. Don't get crazy if you're operating. You've got to, time is money, I get that, but be safe, use your head. If you're operating and you're going through kind of a battle zone, a highway out there, and there's all kinds of obstructions and, unlevel surfaces, be careful. Think about the people in the back. Be cautious out there, and never take for granted when you're doing all that anybody that's driving through that section knows that you're doing anything. What happens to police officers all the time when they have pullovers and their lights are flashing on their cars? You ever see what happens? Constantly get hit. Motorists are like, oh, cool, there's some, oh, boom, they run right into them. They're mesmerized by those flashing lights. It just draws them over like moths to a flame. Okay? So be careful, because you could be a victim out there, and we don't want that. Our goal is to do everything possible to keep you safe. Okay? So I love these. These are great little simple things to keep us safe out there if we just practice them and do them. Make it a point to watch out for each other. Make it a point to keep each other safe. How many questions have you got so far? Any? That's awesome. Cool. Okay. Now I'm going to teach you something else that's kind of cool. Anybody in here ever heard of human performance improvement? Well, you're in luck. You're going to hear about it. Anybody in here ever work in or around the INL or a nuclear industry ever? Okay? What's one of the fundamental truths out there? Working in the nuclear industry relative to safety, what's got to be done? What are we protecting people from? Time, distance, and shielding. Pretty uniform. The reason I'm asking you that is people know these terms. Why is that so important? Why is it so important that we all understand safety? We all understand techniques. What's that? So you can be safe, but other than that, so you can ensure everybody else is safe. So you can identify things that keep people, or that put people in harm's way. So here's the thing. There's a program, and this is the program. Man, that's hard to see. How are we going to make that work?
Just zoom it in.
Get it run back some more? I got you.
They get closer to
Scoot it. Yeah, let's see. There we go.
Get him a turtle. Get him a turtle.
Getting better.
No,
Can
just
you
stay
hold
there.
that for a couple hours? That's what it was. Okay. How many of you are old enough to remember 1977 with any clarity? Okay. I figured I'd only see about 3 hands, including mine. I know Mark's cool, huh? 1977, the United States had a nuclear incident that made big public news. 3 Mile Island. Okay, 3 Mile Island was a huge, huge issue. Here's the ironic piece to that. 3 Mile Island was actually an engineering marvel. There was not one single person harmed by any of that event. Nobody. Nobody got contaminated, nobody got injured.
Wow.
But in the public eye, what did people think? Bad news, right? Everybody saw the movies. We got green rabbits bouncing around out in the desert. We got glowing bunnies, glowing deer, glowing people. Children born with 6 arms and 4 fingers. And what's that? I don't know. Video games. I've seen it. Okay. So during that time frame, one of the things that the Department of Energy realized was they got to do something different because people are not going to put up with this. You're talking about thousands and thousands of people that worked in the nuclear industry at that time. And one of the things that was really impactful was what was going on out there in the public eye, because the public was scared to death of it. Here's what's interesting. Do you ever hear about the Greater Yellowstone Coalition in the area? Or some of these organizations that are absolutely 100% against nuclear anything? Because they're convinced that the nuclear clouds float across and drop fallout, and there's all kinds of stuff. But the reality is this. At the time in the United States in 1977, we had over 100 nuclear reactors up and running in the private sector. And in the private sector, the reason they were utilizing was they were a highly, highly efficient way of generating electricity and power. And they were doing it safely. And they were doing it without a whole bunch of waste, excuse me. And, well, I had a little mental click there. But people in general were terrified of it. And so they realized we got to do something different. All this time we've been talking about how in the world do we make sure people don't make mistakes? How do we eliminate that? And here's the fundamental truth. How many of you make mistakes? Does everybody make mistakes? How many mistakes do you make per hour on average? On average, just under normal conditions, you make 5 to 7 mistakes. Or errors, if you will. 5 to 7. And that's under no stress, that's under nothing happening out there, just normal. Now, do they have a big impact on what we're doing? Sometimes, but normally not. They're insignificant. It could be simply that we go out the door and we turn left when we need to turn right. Or we leave our keys on the table and go out the door to go to work. Oh man, I gotta run and get our keys. Little things like that happen on a regular basis. And relative to the nuclear industry, some of the great big catastrophic things that have gone on. We got 3 Mile Island, the SL1 out here. Anybody familiar with that one on the desert? 1961 or 2, or somewhere in that time frame. Yeah, we had a fuel rod fire off with a guy connected to it, hit him up to the ceiling, and that happened out there. That was the Army's fault. We had Chernobyl happen, and a number of things. But here's the thing that was really interesting. Those individuals involved in those incidents were the very best at what they did. I mean, and here's something we have to realize. Each and every one of us are the very best at something or a group of somethings. We're really good at stuff. It's because we're humans. Humans are brilliant. Humans also do a lot of silly things. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. So the Institute of Nuclear Power Ops came together and they started putting together a program which we understand now today is called the Human Performance Improvement. And it is applicable in every industry, every construction, everything that goes on out there because it deals with the human factor. It really addresses why we do what we do. Okay? So what we're trying to do is prevent events. We're trying to prevent injuries. That's our goal is this summer. We want everybody to go to work, make a good wage, work hard, do a great job, and at the end of the day, go home with a paycheck and be able to live our lives happy and do whatever we got to do, whether it's go back to school, spend time with our families, go whatever. That's the goal. Albert Einstein said something pretty profound. He says the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. What was he saying? Is that deep? He was saying if you do what you always do, or if you do what you always did, you'll get what you always got. That's what he was saying. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same result, but thinking it's going to be different, right? Anybody own a cell phone? Do you ever do that? Like there's something, you're getting madder and madder, and pretty soon your $1,000 cell phone goes flying through the air. Nobody does that? Good. Okay, don't do it. It's expensive. What's that?
Yes, it's $200.
This is $200. Oh, then you can afford to do that 5 times. Okay. All right. So here's something that's really interesting. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations went out there and said, okay, we need to do something because we are having so many events right now. And it's just a matter of time before something significant happens again. We just had 3 Mile Island in 1977. That was a big issue. Even though it was an engineering marvel and it did what it was supposed to do, the general public is not going to allow us to do this very, very often, or they're going to demand that it gets shut down. So they started recognizing what we need to do now is stop focusing so much on fixing the person as much as fixing the organization and really fixing the things that trigger people to make mistakes. Understanding that. Going through and understanding that, you know what, we need to protect the equipment from the person, not the person from the equipment. So they started applying this technique of human performance improvement. We'll go over some of these tools. But here's what's really neat. They started capturing data on this. They started recognizing that in 1985, and it's hard to see, but right up there that says 2.38. Now, 2.38 significant events were going on in 1985. That was per reactor. Anybody go to Bonneville in here? Oh, okay, don't try to answer this. It's a math question. Okay. 1985, 2.38 significant, potentially core damaging meltdown events, which is going to bring the public in because every news station is going to report on this. 2.38. There was 100 reactors, we'll say. How many significant events were happening that year? 2.38. You didn't go to Bonneville, really? You should have. No, I'm just teasing. 2.38 but times 100 reactors. Move the decimal over 2 places. 238. I knew you'd get it. You're smart, man. Excellent. No, I like to tease you because you're happy about it. 238. You agree? So 238 events were going on. Out of 100 reactors, 2.38 per reactor, 238 events per year. Is that an acceptable number?
No. No number is acceptable.
No.
Okay.
So is that just like minuscule things going on at the job site? Like,
So this is the comparison. These are things that potentially will damage a reactor.
okay.
Comparative to the little things that happen on a job site. There's some comparisons there. So this is what they gathered relative to a reactor. So 2.38. So they started applying some of the techniques we're going to go over. And this is what they found out. The very next year they were down to 1.66 because they started recognizing we need to understand people are going to make mistakes. So what's triggering those mistakes? They kept dropping it down. 1987, 0.85. 1988, 0.88. We get clear out here to the most recent data I had. 2010, 0.04. How many is that? 4. 4 accidents. Is that a good number? Much better, isn't it? We can almost live with it, except that 4 is still too many. 4 is still not acceptable because that means we're still having 4 potential catastrophic failures. Now, click forward. Think about that for a minute. What that 4 means. 4 out of 100. 4%. 4% of everything that we had out there, we're still having problems with. Now here's an old phone bill, Quest. Anybody remember Quest?
Yeah, essentially.
You're laughing. They were paying about it. I laugh about this. Here's the thing that's really intriguing about this. Back when this bill was sent out in 2001, it was for $368. This is for a home, a line in the house. That's ridiculous. But this is the thing that we want to look at down here. See that finger pointing out there? They were so proud of the fact that 98% out of 18 million installs were met on time. And is that good? What is 98% of 18 million? It's a big number, right? It's easier to do this. What's 2%? So if 98% are done on time, that means 2% are not done on time, right? Fair enough? What's 2% of 18 million? 360,000. I went to Bonneville, I could do that, but I cheated. I used a calculator and memorized it. Okay. 2% of 18 million, 360,000 installs were not met on time. Now let's put that in perspective. In 2001, how many people lived in southeastern Idaho? So if you put that in perspective, that's almost saying that, yeah, we did a 98% great, but we didn't care about southeast Idaho. Everybody there, we were late, but it was no big deal. And if you live in southeast Idaho at that time, how did you feel about it?